As Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, as the acting vice chair until we elect new ones, did you want to start the meeting?
Oh, sure. It's called order for the North Bend Planning Commission. First order of business is elect a planning commission chair and vice chair.
Okay. And so Brian, everybody here has a piece of paper too in front of them, one for chair and one for vice chair. What we're going to ask you guys to do is anybody who does not want to be considered for either of those positions, let us know. Speak now, and then when we get that known, I'll just have everybody write down who they would elect for chair or vice chair, and then we'll have Derek select them and see what the answer is. Brian, maybe you could either message it in or you can just tell us however you guys feel most comfortable.
Well, this is Wayne Shrunk, and I'm too deaf and all to hear, so I don't really want to be in either one of the positions.
What? Can you speak up, Wayne?
Yeah.
I don't mind doing it, just it's hard to do it up here. So that's, I mean, I don't know if it's realistic to do it from here. So.
So this is Ron Cooch. I've just taken on being the chair of the legislative action team for the chamber, and my plate is full. I wouldn't mind being vice chair because something about vice sounds like it's like more fun. But I would not like to be considered for the chair at this time.
I'm Ben Rolchek. I'm the new guy, and I don't know what's going on. So
You get a pass this.
I'm good.
I will say that I'm not against it, I'm not excited to do it, but I have a bad feeling we're not gonna vote for it. I'm just putting that out there.
Okay, Joe, John, any last words? No.
Let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. And I'll just say that Brian, I think Brian could act as either chair or vice chair remotely. Probably not a big deal, but we'll let you guys vote.
Did you say Brian isn't
He
open?
He could.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he didn't want it, did he? Is that
Well,
what
he said he didn't mind. He
Oh.
just didn't know how feasible it was being remote. I think it's okay.
Is he comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with that, Brian?
Yeah, if it's fine, as long as you guys are aware I can't be there for probably several months. So,
Yeah.
but if nobody else wants to do it, it's fine. I'll need a little bit of guidance from, a little more paperwork from Chelsea, maybe for, it's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough.
Be squared away.
Does it mess anything up for me to just abstain for this go around?
No.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
One thing, if Brian was to be on there, when he's doing the remote, is there any way he would be able to have it on the, his picture here where we can see him when he talks?
Derek, I think that's possible. It just,
Can you not see it now?
Yeah, we can see him now.
So
can you see it on your screen?
Matter, Wayne, your ears aren't working?
Yeah,
Wayne, is he on your screen?
no, my, oh, my,
Oh, it's just your screen.
Oh,
I'll turn it off and turn it back on and see if it works.
That's what
I don't have a signal, it says.
Okay, we can fix, we
Oh,
can work on that.
they unplugged it.
There you go. There it is.
Stand by for technical difficulties.
Stand by for technical difficulties.
Oh, there it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Okay,
Okay, so when you guys write them down, we can collect them. Grab them. Thank you. Thank you. And then we'll figure out how Brian wants to let us know.
I vote for Kate.
you were gonna say that.
you want me to announce?
Yes.
So it looks like our new chair is gonna be Brian Gould, and our vice chair is gonna be Ron Hughes.
What?
Congratulations.
You're kind of asked for it. Well, I thought that was gonna happen. Okay.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Okay.
So Brian.
Yep.
Don't miss anything.
Oh, well, yeah, I'll be here. Don't worry. I can make it.
Okay.
Okay, great. So
Thank you.
Chair Gould. Moving on, next order of business.
All right, the first order of business is approval of minutes for November 16th, 2020. Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes? And does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I was in attendance, I believe, because I made a motion. And then I just had a question, the December minutes, did we just not seen those, correct?
Did we have December minutes?
I don't think we did.
Because it was just a working session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
that's what
why.
I had a question. That was my only comment.
Okay.
Does anyone want to make a motion in regarding to the minutes?
We'll make a motion to approve them after including me.
A second.
Have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you. Schedule of public hearings. Just want to put out, so is there anybody signed up to speak on these? Or is it just written comments, Chelsea?
Yes, so for the variance case, I don't know that our applicant is going to be speaking, but for the amendment case, we have 2 people signed up to give oral comment.
Okay. Okay, so I'll open the hearing on 4.1, case number variance 4-20, variance to authorize property line adjustment resulting in non-conforming lot remaining non-conforming. Subject property vacant land and 30093039 Ash Street, assessor map number 225 South, 13 West, 21 AB, tax lots 3,100 and 30,000. Current zoning residential zone R6, applicable criteria, chapter 18.80 North Bend City Code variances, chapter 18.12 North Bend City Code residential zone R6, chapter 17.36 North Bend City Code property line adjustments. Chelsea, your staff report?
Okay, so this one seems maybe unnecessarily complicated. It's really quite simple. Yes, Wayne.
I need to bow out.
Okay.
as conflict of interest. I sell them land for their subject, for their developments and everything, so I get money from them.
Okay, and well, do you think that it would affect your ability to make a decision, neutral, unbiased decision in this case?
No,
Because you could state that and also state that you feel like you could make
I could make a
a
non-partial judgment, yeah.
in that case, you can remain.
And I'll say,
Okay, good deal. Anybody else? No. So this is a case where we have subject property at Lewis Street in the corner of Ash. The owner owns 2 lots. One is developed with a duplex. The other is like a legal lot, 25 feet by about 100 feet. It could be developed with a single family residence, but that residence would be limited to like a 15-foot wide building. It would really make the building footprint limited, maybe not so much room for parking, maybe a different type of development than are others in the area. So what the developer is trying to do is adjust the lot line so that the smaller lot becomes a little bit closer to the 6,000 square feet that's required in that zone. And the reason why they need a variance is because staff cannot authorize a property line adjustment unless both lots result in 2 lots that meet the lot size requirements for the zone. And it's just not possible because that lot with the duplex on it needs to maintain a minimum of 9,000 square feet. And so when you leave the 9,000 square feet for the duplex, you can only get up to about 4,400 square feet for the other lot. So it's quite a bit larger than it is now, which is about 2,600 something square feet. So they're trying to get closer to compliance, which is a plus, but staff can't authorize that adjustment without planning commission granting a variance. So that's why they're here. They're not actually asking for the property line adjustment to be approved yet. They haven't submitted the application. They want to make sure before they pay that cost and go through the surveys and everything that planning commission is on board. But they are asking planning commission to consider that. When you look around the neighborhood, there are other lots that are undersized, less than 6,000 square feet in that zone. And so staff thinks, it's reasonable. It's a good thing that they want to make the lot, try to get it more compliant. It will better fit the other developments in that zone. We had a couple of comments. The assessor just noted that when they submitted the application, the deed had not been recorded in their system yet. That was something the applicant mentioned upon submitting the document, that they were still going through that recording process. So certainly as part of the actual property line adjustment, that would be required, that they are the actual owners and they would have to show that. So you'll see that as a recommended condition of approval. The county surveyor thought everything looked straightforward and reasonable. The Coquel Indian tribe noted that they'd like to see extreme caution taken when the developer develops. They would ask that developer, if they come across any suspected cultural resources, that they actually notify the tribe. No concerns from our admin department. And then the Public Works and Building Department just identified that the developer would need to meet all the requirements for an actual property line adjustment application, and then any building requirements moving forward. So you'll see on page 39 of the staff report, it's the proposed recommendation. It has, I believe, 6 conditions of approval recommended. One being that developed tax lot not be decreased in size to anything less than 9,000 square feet. So when you actually get on the ground and you do the survey, the tax lot 3,100, that vacant lot, will increase to about 4,400 square feet, but that final size will be dependent upon what happens on the ground, the survey. Make sure that setbacks are maintained and just meeting all the other property line adjustment applications. I'll also mention that I did get a call from the owner to the east of the property. They noticed that the developer was out there clearing the land, getting ready for development. And so they were a little bit concerned. And in this case, they had, what we did was went out there and made sure that the developer was doing the site work, putting all the appropriate measures in place to make sure soils and water were not draining onto another property while they're developing. But that developer could develop regardless of the property line adjustment. So they just have to make sure they meet the setback. Excuse me. So again, in this case, it's really just making sure that planning commission is comfortable authorizing a property line adjustment that doesn't quite get to the required 6,000 square feet, but it doesn't make the property any less compliant. It's trying to reach compliance. So does any commissioners have any questions about this? Yes.
I have a question. So you stated that on the existing lot, it's narrow.
Yeah.
How wide is it? 25 feet?
25 feet.
You said that they could build on that.
Yeah.
Even though it's non-conforming.
Yes, and that's because it's a legal lot. It was established before zoning was implemented, and they can show that through the deed history, that it was a single lot, held in single ownership. And so in that case, our code says that you could build a single family dwelling on it, but it would have to meet the setback, the lot coverage. And so it just minimizes your footprint.
So extending that out to whatever feet doesn't change that.
No, it does not. You still can build a single family, and you still have to meet setbacks and lot coverage for that zone.
Okay, and I'm curious about the other homes in the area that are on non-conforming lots. Are they kind of in the same boat? They were kind of grandfathered in?
I have to assume that they were, and they were able to show that, back when they were developed. Okay.
That's all.
See, where is the parts 1 through 6? The listed conditions? Where's that?
Where are the conditions?
Yeah, the listed conditions 1 through 6. Where is that?
Page 39 of your packet, up at the top, page 39.
Okay, thank you.
For the next page, Brian.
Thank you. So the applicant's not there or is not speaking?
No, they are not. They're not here.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the proposed variance?
We don't have anyone in favor, opposed, or neutral.
Okay. So I guess we'll open it to discussion, close the public hearing and open it to discussion. Commissioners, do you have any comments?
I have a comment in the sense of when we passed that ordinance here a year or two ago, one of the things that was a concern that I had voiced was the fact of a smaller lot could result in a home that didn't really fit the neighborhood. And that was a concern we had. So seeing that they're wanting to make a lot that they could just build on right now, make it bigger so that they could make the home match more of the existing homes or looks around there. I'm very pleased to see that happen. So.
Anyone else? I'll invite a motion if anyone has a motion.
Is this do we make a motion to let them know that we're for it?
A motion to allow staff to go ahead and
Advise them.
and review and approve a property line adjustment.
Okay. Well, I'd make a motion that we would, or were you doing? Go ahead.
Do they have to come in and actually get the variance later?
This would be authorizing the variance
Okay.
to go through that property line adjustment process.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's motions there on page 3, Wayne, if you want to read one of those.
Page 10 of the packet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't see the one you wanted, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve staff to move forward with the lot line adjustment and allowing her to notify the people that were for it and comply with the stipulations on page 39, the 6 conditions of approval that are listed out.
I'll second that.
So is that a good enough motion, Chelsea? I mean, it kind of covers what you have in the paperwork. Was that good enough for you?
I think so, yes.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Case number 4.2, case number AMD 2-20, zone text amendment, proposed amendments to North Bend City Code Title 18, zoning related to notice requirements for legislative hearings and permit expiration timelines. Subject property, City of North Bend, city limits, applicable criteria, Chapter 18.84, North Bend City Code Amendment Procedures. I don't think anybody needs to declare on this. We all live in the city. Is that correct, Chelsea?
Correct. I don't think so.
So is there a staff report?
Yes. So I'll just briefly go over the background and the purpose. So these proposed text amendments are related to permit expiration timelines for all permits under the zoning ordinance, as well as notice requirements for legislative public hearings. So that's for text amendments, comprehensive plan amendments, maybe street vacations, the notice requirements for those. It doesn't affect notice requirements for conditional uses, floodplain permits, estuary permits, all of that. This kind of started back when council made a decision last year that said the provision under the zoning ordinance that speaks to conditional use permits and variance permits, their expiration timeline, that those applied to floodplain permits, estuary permits, etc. And so this is trying to clarify that provision does not just apply to conditional use permits, not just variances, but all the permits that can be authorized under the zoning ordinance. So that's what we're trying to clean up here. And then in doing that, we're trying to make the timeline for permits a little more reasonable. Some projects take longer than others. And so it takes staff time and resources to continue to come back, through the whole public process. It takes applicants, costs them money. And that's from, the Joe, Bolig, who lives in North Bend and is trying to, maybe just do a small land use approval, conditional use, all the way up to the bigger project. So we're trying to cover everybody there. The notice requirements have been an issue with the city. For legislative public hearing notices, we are required to publish in a newspaper no less than 4 newspaper notices. And that's in a case where the state does not require any newspaper notices be published. And so in a time where the city is under budget constraints, we're trying to look for a way to cut some costs, but still maintain, keep the public in the loop through the public process. And so when looking at other communities around us, it's very standard to have at least 1 newspaper notice, and you could certainly do more if you wanted, but it's not common to have 4. That's pretty excessive. So the changes proposed are just trying to clear that up for all permits when it comes to expirations and for notice requirements when it comes to legislative. We got some comments today, this afternoon, and I kind of want to go over them and address them briefly before we allow, there's 2 people signed up for oral comment and then let planning commission discuss. So some of the comments I received or we received were that one notice is not sufficient. Reducing the required number of newspaper notices for these public hearings will hurt citizens' ability to participate in the public process. That citizens don't have access to internet, and so if you limit the newspaper notices, you're going to limit their ability to learn about the public hearing. And then that notices should be posted at City Hall 21 days in advance as opposed to 10 days, which is what's proposed. And that's like a posting on a bulletin board or a posting pushed to subscribers through the internet. So I want to reiterate that these notice requirements they only relate to legislative public hearings. Those are plan and text amendments, vacations. They're not, they do not affect conditional use permits, floodplain development permits, estuary permits, things like floodplain and estuary permits. They don't have notices sent out, and public comment is not a requirement for those. The conditional use permits, they have their own set of notices that are required, and one is not a newspaper notice. Again, state law requires 0 newspaper notices. So maintaining the one notice is, is allowing still for citizens to participate in the public process. Again, most communities provide for one, and that still allows people without access to internet to have the opportunity to be noticed through the public newspaper. I'll say that the city has a history of publishing a notice in a newspaper, even in cases where it's not required. So if there's a case where there's a large citizen interest and it's a big community deal, the city has gone ahead and published the notice, even when it's not required for the case. And regarding that comment about making the posting at City Hall notice 21 days in advance instead of 10, that's certainly something that commission could recommend be changed, the number, that more notice is given in advance. I think that intent here was that the official notice would be in the paper at least 20 days in advance, and then another notice would be out no less than 10 days, get you closer to the hearing, fresh in your mind, make sure that people had kind of that remembrance there. So that was the point there. Some comments suggested that permit time limits should not be extended because projects need to be continuously reassessed for having made progress. Currently, we don't reassess permits for progress at the time when they apply for an extension. It's not about whether or not they've made progress. It's just about, are they asking for the extension, and is it, that's really it. Did they ask for it? Did they say they're in the future? The point would be to give them kind of this 4-year period of being grandfathered in to approval and not having to look at whether or not the criteria changed. And then after that, if they still hadn't got a building permit, they still hadn't implemented their use, then we would look at it and say, did the criteria change? If so, then we need to re-review this. And at that point, you need a new permit. But if not, there's really no reason to go through the public process unless the project changes. If the project changes or if the criteria changes, those are both 2 valid reasons to go back over an application. Otherwise, as long as nothing changes, there's no harm, no foul. And so, but again, we're not reassessing for progress. The progress is the progress as far as do you meet the conditions of approval, that's being looked at by staff. And you have to, the burden is on the applicant to prove that they've made the progress, they've got all the required permits, because we're not going to issue you a building permit to move forward until you do. So until you've made that progress, you've satisfied all the land use decision criteria, you would be under this time limit provision that says, you've got a total of 4 years to get something done. After that, if you don't, we're going to take it back if the criteria changes. Otherwise, if they pull a building permit and they've satisfied their conditions, gonna move into a different time slot. Somebody mentioned that they wanted to see floodplain development permits continuously reassessed by the public for progress. Those permits are generally not permits that involve any public comment. You saw in the Jordan Cove Pacific Connector gas pipeline cases that their floodplain development permits and their estuary permits were on display for public comment, but that was a decision to pick it up to a higher decision-making body because of the interest, citizen interest. Otherwise, that would not be the case. Typically, permits should not be allowed to be extended indefinitely. Again, this is not trying to extend permits indefinitely. It's just trying to give a project a longer period of time to come in, get their project started, and within a reasonable time period, and then to also have that oversight that if criteria changes for the city or if the project changes, then they would have to come back to the process. So we could certainly clarify in the proposed amendments that that's the intent, that if the criteria changes, then the permit's no longer valid. They have to come back to the process. But that is what the intent of the changes are. We could certainly say that more clearly. Somebody asked, why are you removing the term conditional use permit from that permit timeline heading section? And it is because right now it was confusing. Does it only apply to conditional uses or does it apply to everything? We want to say that that provision applies to all permits under the zoning ordinance, not just conditional use permits. And then somebody made a comment about asking, why are you removing council from acting as an authorizing agent of an extension and only allowing the planning director of planning commission to do that? And that was a typo in the application where one of the crossed out lines had been moved from, it was supposed to be over one time and it got moved over city council. So that's not the intent. We're not removing council as an authorizing agent. It's actually corrected in the proposed recommendation where it comes out more accurately. But so that was a good catch, but staff has corrected that. So those are some of the highlights. If any commissioners have any specific questions about what's been proposed, we talked about this in a work session in December. So great.
On the extension,
Yeah.
when they get 2 years, and then staff can give them a one-time 2-year extension. Did you say that when you give that 2-year extension, if something has changed, then they gotta reapply?
It's after the one-time 2-year extension. So after a total of 4 years, then they can come back and ask. And every year, we're gonna look and see, did the criteria change?
Got it.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
I agree with the city's proposed not using the newspaper. The one thing I disagree with though is I do think it should be 21 days. It gives people plenty of time.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Okay, and that's, noted. Right now, the newspaper would be at least 20 days, but not that, like, on the bulletin board, so we can certainly change that. That's not a big deal at all.
Chelsea, was there a reason that 10 days would work better?
Does it have to do with staff timing?
No, it was just because it's not that official notice, and so trying to kind of give you another notice within a time period, so it's kind of fresh in your mind. Oh, I got that. This is coming up, in the next week, rather than I got the notice last month and I forgot, So that was the intent, but I don't think that it hurts to have it 20 days in advance. I think that's totally fine.
And on the newspaper notices, which newspapers?
Let's see. The way it has been written, and the way that it is written in any newspaper of general circulation in the city. So it's typically been the World, but there's other, papers in circulation, maybe kind of what it puts out those. Yeah, something like that. I mean, it can certainly be in that too.
On the cost, $150 cost of the advertising, isn't that passed on to the applicant? Don't they pay the cost?
It is, but often the applicant is the city, and so we eat the cost. So in this case, right now, this case is the city, and so we're paying, you know, that 150 every time the newspaper
Okay.
notice is published.
Okay.
How long have we been doing it? Or we're gonna try?
That's a good question. For as long as I know.
Is there, are there any other drawbacks to moving to the new system?
I do not think so. I think what happened is the way that our code is worded. I don't know that it was the intent that it would be for, but the way that it's worded, you know, after going over it with our legal counsel, is that you have to do 2 before planning commission and 2 before city council. So I don't think there's any drawbacks as long as you have the notice, it has all the required information, and it gives people the information about how to get more, where to go for more information.
So I understand that too, we're dropping it in the newspaper.
Not dropping it completely, just cutting back the total number required for like text minutes, 10 minutes from 4 to 1. And it doesn't preclude you from having more notices. It just says you don't have to do the 4.
I know that in some cases of notices, I had some deals with the probate years ago. There was some newspaper that I put a notice in because I was required to. in other words. So I think that the city could, I think the city of North Bend could follow the law. It still would be better than the proposal. So we could technically publish something in the newspaper that nobody would ever read, as long as it's circulated in the city. So I'm fine with reducing the newspaper to once, because I think that that's adequate, as long as we continue to push out the city website and other forms of communication. We've been doing much better of that recently. I get notifications from daily going on. That's how people communicate now. We don't communicate so much in the newspaper. They don't continue to communicate online moving forward. So as long as we can do that, I'm completely satisfied with one notification.
That's right. I should mention that the city of North Bend has started a big push for social media, notices on social media, such as Facebook too. So that's something new for us.
Chelsea also is there a list, like if you know, like this is the city kind of one.
We do. Or if you subscribe to the online notices, then every time one goes out, it pushes out to everybody on the list.
I think as a caveat, we should add that to, we should make sure that that is advertised, that that's available to our community.
The subscribers.
Subscribers, yeah, we should advertise that more relevant, make it more relevant. We're gonna do away with the newspapers, which I don't think that many people get their information from the newspaper anymore. So.
Yeah, we'll look at it. Chelsea, you know how big that email list is?
Gosh, it's fairly substantial. I haven't looked at it like recently, but I would think an even ballpark figure, probably a couple hundred at least on there.
They will in the city, 10,000, I wouldn't call it substantial.
Well, for people interested in receiving notices.
Right. Right.
I just think as long as you keep on.
Rolling that in. And I'd be okay with making a requirement of posting on social media. Is that a requirement now, or is that
It's not a requirement.
think we should make that a requirement
Okay,
and keep driving people as much as possible to electronic forms of communication.
And I
I know
know,
not everybody has it. I understand. Not everybody has a desire to have it.
So who were you saying, Ron, that needs to be on that internet, on the email list?
oh, I think that we should keep encouraging people to subscribe
Okay,
to the notices.
okay. Okay. Some of them will do this. Yeah.
But just to clarify, on page 58, under number 1, the public hearing, you're saying add in some language that says that it also has to be put out on the city's distribution list for public notices. You want that language in?
Yes, I would like to see it.
And then that's also where we would change the 10 to 21 days. At least 21 days before the date involved. Public hearings before the city council and planning commission.
yes, that's fine. And we have 2 people in the waiting room to speak as well. Yes, Brian? Have him unmute.
All right. Can you hear me again?
Hear you.
Yeah.
You see it.
Okay, it just all of a sudden died audio. So is there anybody that's wishing to speak in favor of this on your list, Chelsea?
No.
And I assume there are some people that wish to speak against it based on that. Okay. So who is first?
You can have actually. Ashley, can you hear us?
Wish to speak against it based on that? Okay. So who is first?
Hi. Before,
You
oh.
can have Ashley.
Yeah, I do want to note before making my specific comment that myself and whoever's been watching the YouTube have not been able to understand anything that's been said about this specific agenda item. If you look back on the YouTube, the audio's been morphed the entire time. So whatever has been addressed, myself and whoever else is trying to tune in to understand the discussion has not been able to have that proper access. So I just wanted to notify that because during this entire time, I don't know if anybody from the city's watching the chat on the YouTube page, but we've been trying to make notes about like, hey, we can't understand what's being said. And this may be an issue for later on if folks are trying to tune this meeting, watch this meeting after the MAFA because yeah, the audio has been really disjointed. So so I just wanted to note that first. I don't know if folks wanted to like try to fix any technical issues. I'm watching the chat right now, so I don't know if Natalie or whoever else is watching can understand me speak right now on the Zoom. But yeah, I just wanted to note that before actually saying my actual comment.
Thanks, Ashley.
Well, with that being said, I will read my actual comment now. Thank you for the opportunity to address concerns about the proposed amendment 220 for legislation legislative hearing notices and permit expiration timelines for the North Bend City Code. North Bend codes and standards must prioritize a fair and equitable process for community members, not special corporate interests. The proposed changes for North Bend City Code 1884040 include shifting how public hearings are announced, changing from 2 publication notices in the local newspaper to the proposed 1 publication notice will harm the community's ability to be involved in the process that impact their lives. We often hear from community members that they are already having a hard time tracking North Bend land use processes, and we believe reducing the number of notices will add to the hardship. The Planning Commission should find ways to make information more plentiful and accessible to the public. Other proposed text amendments include extending the time limit for permit authorization from 1 year to 2 years. This shift is for permits that tend to fit under the criteria of floodplain development, conditional use, estuarine use variances, and zoning compliance determinants to authorize a use, activity, or structure. Development projects that require these types of permits often also need other local permits as well as state and federal approvals. The current permit structure of for a 1-year time limit with an opportunity to request a 1-year extension provides accountability to see if the applicant is on track to meet the requirements of the permit. By extending the time limit to 2 years on the permits listed above, project developers are not as accountable if they are not meeting standards, which may include getting federal and state approvals. Projects that may impact our precious estuary, environment, public safety, and local fisheries must continue to be reviewed after 1 year to see if an extension is in fact appropriate. The North Bend Planning Commission should not approve these amendment changes for case file number AMD 220 and should instead support changes that make it easier for community members to get information and to be involved in these processes. The proposed amendments do not support a fair and accountable process for North Bend residents and other community members impacted by these proposed developments. And I did want to note that I know at least 1 community member was trying to get a written comment submitted for the hearing. It was unclear on the submission page that on the website that the comments were actually due on Friday. Written comments were due on Friday, they noted. This is one of the frustrations that community members face when trying to submit comments. We asked for any comments that were submitted later today to be accepted into the public record. Sorry if they were mentioned so earlier. It was really hard to understand that review of the comments during this meeting. So I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Ashley Audicki. I'm the Coos County Field Organizer for Road Climate in Coos Bay. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was difficult to hear audio there for the last 10 minutes or so. So I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Natalie Ranger.
Yeah, Chelsea, your audio is just doesn't come through very well, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. Eric, you see anything on your answers?
I'm looking at it right now. I would have to make a change so we can turn this off.
And actually, it's all the audio in that room is just coming through garble. Is Natalie going to speak, Chelsea?
Yes, you didn't recognize me.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
And I have to reiterate Ashley Audicki's statement. You just stated for like the last 10 minutes, can you hear me?
We
can hear you, correct.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. but it's like we couldn't hear anything. I am going to speak. Hello, this is a recording.
Yeah, Natalie, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
You know, you are hearing a recording. That is not me speaking right now. I just said that. What is going on with the audio, please?
Oh, Natalie, I was going to mention, do you have the YouTube page up? Because for me, when I first started making my comment, I had to remember to turn off the YouTube sound.
I don't, this is what I just said. That is a recording. Hold on. Yeah. I don't understand what's going on.
Natalie, I can hear you fine, Natalie. So.
Yes, Natalie, we can hear you just fine. So if you just want to speak.
Yes, please. Okay. Planning Director Schnabel and Planning Commission. I oppose the proposed amendments for notice requirements for legislative hearings and the extension of permit expiration timelines put. This. Okay. Okay, I still hear this recording. Okay. Oh, okay.
Natalie, your audio is working fine, and I could hear Chelsea fine as well. So
okay.
I think you're good to go.
I'm hearing this recording.
What I mentioned earlier, Natalie, I don't know if you still have the YouTube page still up.
That's what I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry. Maybe that's my problem. I'm afraid I'm just going to delete the Zoom is what's the bigger problem.
Yeah, I think what I hear in the background is the YouTube page. So don't turn off the Zoom, but your web browser that has the YouTube page on there, just close that. That's my suggestion.
Hello, I think I just found YouTube and they're gone.
We can still hear you, Natalie.
Okay. I thought I did. Okay. I oppose the proposed amendments for notice requirements for legislative hearings and the extension of permit expiration timelines put forth in AMD 220. It is common knowledge that the recipients of the South Coast, that the residents of the South Coast now receive only 2 newspapers per week delivered through the world. To require only 1 publication of a hearing notice is not adequate to inform the local citizens of upcoming hearings or meetings. I would also, oh God, Can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I
We hear
think maybe, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just kept hearing this repeating in the background, but I think maybe no, it's might be gone. Anyway, I would like to remind the commission also of the strain put on the community by our COVID crisis and suggest that it would be advisable to make the dissemination of information easier and more accessible rather than more difficult during this time. You may decide to address this at a later time, but for now, a more easily informed public is certainly beneficial to us all. I also oppose the proposed extension of permit authorization time from 1 to 2 years. I will address this in reference to my dealings with the Jordan Cove Energy Project, with which I'm most experienced. For years, Jordan Cove has applied for and received extensions of permit applications at the county level as well as at Coos Bay and North Bend. One of the most egregious examples is regarding the pipeline route over Blue Ridge. The approval of this application has been extended for 11 years, during which time affected landowners have not been able to sell or use their properties freely. You may say that this is not what North Bend is intending to do with your permit extensions. However, you have not placed any restrictions on the extensions. You also have not placed any regulations on your 2-year extension permits. There should be restrictions on the applicant to make progress toward the final passage of an application, which is usually expressed by making progress in attaining federal and/or local permits. To grant extensions, to grant extensions with no requirements toward maintaining the health of our estuary and our citizens and our environment is an offense to the residents of North Bend. We deserve better, and I know you can provide it. And I thank you very much for your patience. But we really couldn't hear anything that you said.
Thank you, Natalie. Chelsea, is there anyone else?
No, that's all.
So that's opposed. Are there any more questions for the applicant from commissioners?
I guess I would ask that maybe Chelsea, could you just run through what is the brief little summary that you gave us before, while we still have Natalie and Ashley on the Zoom call?
Yeah.
And then we'll sort out the audio on the YouTube later.
Yeah.
For the rest of the public.
Yeah, so Ashley, Natalie, I tried to address the comments that were received, the written comments, some of the points that were made, such as, one notice isn't sufficient. When you reduce the required number of newspaper notices, it hurts the citizens' ability to participate. The notices are identifying that not everyone has access to the internet. And also one comment asked that the posting at City Hall and on the city's website be changed from 10 days to no less than 21 days in advance. And so I want to reiterate that these public hearing notice requirement, the changes being proposed, they're only for legislative public hearings. They're not for things like floodplain development permits, estuary permits, conditional uses. Those all have their own set of criteria for notices. And the state law requires 0 newspaper notices for a legislative public hearing. That's for things like text amendments, plan amendments, street vacations. And so the city doesn't want to get rid of all newspaper notices, but the 4 notices is excessive, and especially compared to other communities in the area and compared to what state law requires. And so when the city is in a time of budget constraints. We're trying to be mindful of that, and also still keep in mind that the public absolutely deserves to be noticed. Newspaper is one way. We also want to build into that the notices be pushed out on social media, they be sent to email subscribers, they be put on the city's website. So they'll be, posted at City Hall. So we want to make sure that the notices are provided in multiple ways so that we can get more of the public notified. And I want to call out that the city has a history of publishing notices in the newspaper, even in cases where those newspaper notices are not required. For example, in the Jordan Cove Pacific Connector gas pipeline cases, those floodplain and estuary permits were not required to be noticed in a newspaper, but the city chose to do so, knowing the large interest of the community and the citizens. And so we wanted to make sure that the public was involved. So we're not trying to get rid of, limit the public's notice and ability to participate and comment, but we're trying to kind of balance that with the city's budget. And commission discussed the request that the City Hall notice and the posting to email subscribers and whatnot, that date be changed from 10 days to actually 21 days, affording people more time, to be noticed before a hearing took place. People commented that these permit on the time limits, that the extensions, they should be continuously reassessed for having made progress. And I just want to make it clear that when we are looking at extending a permit, that we're not looking at whether or not they've made progress. We're looking at, if they've made progress, meaning did they implement the use? Did they satisfy all conditions of approval? Did they get a building permit? Then they're no longer under this provision for land use permit timeline expirations. They're kicked into, a building permit timeline or whatnot. And so when when there are conditions of approval, such as state and federal permits and whatnot, if the applicant has the burden to show the city that they've satisfied those. And until they have shown the city that they've satisfied any and all conditions of approval, they won't be issued a building permit and they won't be allowed to implement their use. And so their permit really is only as good as them satisfying those conditions of approval. Somebody made a comment that they wanted to see floodplain development permits continuously reassessed by the public for progress. Those permits aren't typically assessed by the public at all. In the case of Jordan Cove, they were, because it was kicked up to Planning Commission and City Council. But otherwise, those are not typically permits that the public comment on. There was the comments about permits not being allowed to be extended indefinitely. The proposal does not allow those to be extended indefinitely. When it's land use permits, the important thing to look at is the project itself changing and is the land use criteria changing? Assuming the project hasn't changed, the proposal would say that you've got a total of 4 years to kind of quote unquote be grandfathered in under the code you were authorized under. And then after that, if you haven't, met your conditions of approval and implemented your use or got a building permit, you can ask for an extension, but we're going to look at it and see if the criteria changed. If the criteria changed, if we got new rules under the estuary zone or a new rules under the base zone, we're going to tell you that your permit's no longer valid and you need to go back through the process. So it's only as good as, as fast as they can get their project started. If they don't get it started and they want to hang out, indefinitely, and we change criteria, then that's going to be on them to come back and have to address that. Also, somebody asked about why are you removing the term conditional use permit? And I just want to clarify that in the provision under permit timelines right now, it calls out conditional use permits variances. And council recently made the decision that those provisions, they are apply to more than just conditional use permits and variances. They apply to floodplain permits. They apply to estuary permits. So what we want to do is clean that up and say, you know, this provision applies to any permit that could be authorized under the zoning ordinance. And that is a, you know, should be a good thing because it would put the oversight on the permit. If they're not getting something done or if the criteria changes, we have a chance to re-review it. And then somebody caught in the application, they asked, why are you removing council from authorizing an authorizing agent for extending permits? And that wasn't the intent. That was actually a typo where the word city council was crossed out and it was meant to be crossed out over one time. And so it's not the intent to take council out as an authorizing agent. And you'll see in the proposed recommendation that that was cleaned up by staff, that was fixed. But those are kind of the main points that I saw, and just want to reiterate that it's not the intent to remove the public from the process, and it is not the intent to extend permits indefinitely. We just want to provide a reasonable timeline for projects that we, you know, sometimes don't get off the ground right away, whether it's because of the economy or the nature of the size, or, you know, the regular Joe down the street just, you know, can't make it happen as fast as they wanted to. And account for city budget resources and staff time and applicants, all applicants. So that's really the intent. And that's kind of just trying to address some of those concerns that were made. That's what I was talking about probably during the 10 minutes. You guys couldn't hear anything.
Thank you for repeating that. It really makes a difference on understanding the staff report. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any discussion, comments?
Yeah, it appeared as though some of the issues that they had as far as the time period and community involvement understanding are the same things that we've been talking about in here, that get the notice out 21 days before, increase the emails and internet communication, because very few people read the world newspaper anymore, and there's better ways of getting it to them. I think putting it on a web page, most of the people that want to be involved, like all the people that signed up here, they should be on the email list. They need to sign up with the city and get on the email list to get notices of what's going on. And I think that's going to be the better way. And I think even Jody didn't speak, but she had listed some items that she was concerned on. And I believe we covered most of them as far as opportunities for widespread public involvement. They can be involved. Yeah, we're in a pandemic, and we're having to do it through Zoom, but it's there. Hopefully we can get a little better sound at times and get that better. But I think we have asked as a planning commission, I've been on here for many years, and we've asked the public to be involved, and very, very seldom does the public ever get involved, even with the advertising as much as we've done it in the past and spent all that money. People just aren't that involved. They don't come here unless it's something major like the pipeline or something like that. So I think we've addressed the issues that most all of the people that wrote their letters in there, as far as letting the people be aware of what's going on. And I think they just need to take it to the next level, and they need to get onto the webpage, email. When they get it, they can send that out to all their friends through whatever social media they want to use, you know.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion, I guess, if there's any of you that have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I recommend, Planning Commission recommends City Council approve case file number AMD 2-20 and adopt by ordinance the findings, conclusions, and recommendation of Planning Commission as presented in Planning Commission recommendation to approve case file number AMD 2-20. as revised to reflect testimony, evidence, and comments received during the public hearing. Specifically, that under North Bend City Code 18.84.040, notice of hearing at least 21 days before the date of all public hearings, City Council and the Planning Commission shall cause notice of the hearing at City Hall and on the city website. And then also to add language to include that it would be in the city's email subscriber distribution list.
I'll second it. That's very good.
Thank you, Kate. Wayne. All those in favor of Kate's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Other business or any other business, Chelsea?
There is none for me tonight.
And is there any public comment this evening?
No general public comment, no.
Or commissioner comment? If so, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for your confidence.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Hey, good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Have a good evening. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.